And ladies and gentlemen, the Metropolitan Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session for its regularly scheduled meeting of January the 16th, 2025. I am Joey Hargis, the Metro Zoning Administrator, and I will present the cases for the Codes Department on the wall here above the members by means of a PowerPoint presentation. I'll present any photographs, sketches that the Codes Department's taken, along with any site plans submitted by applicants. After my presentation, the applicant will come first to the table, and if there is not opposition to the case, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present their case to the board. That time is kept just as you're seating the 4 seats in front of the board. Just to your right on the ledge there is a clock. That clock, I will keep track of that over here, but the clock will run during your testimony. It will not run for your introduction of who you are. So when you come up, identify yourself, give us your address, and then make your presentation to the board. It will stop for any questions that the board has of you, and it will stop for any answers that you provide the board's to the board's questions. After you've completed your answer, we'll start it back up. If you're here, or if you're here on a case that has opposition to it, both sides of a case, that's both the applicant and the opposition as a group, will have 10 minutes to present their testimony to the board. Now, a reminder, that is 10 minutes total, not per speaker. So if there's a lot of folks here that want to talk, kind of work out who's talking and for how long, but the same 10 minutes will apply to you. For applicants for cases with opposition, you will have to, you will want to save some of your 10 minutes for rebuttal period, and you can let us know at the beginning of your presentation how much you'd like to save for rebuttal, but it'll come out of that 10 minutes. Opposition, you don't get a rebuttal. You get one chance to talk to this board. So the process will be, I'll go first, explain to the board what variance you're looking for, whatever the case is, and then the applicant will come first, and then the opposition will come, and then the applicant for rebuttal on cases. We do have a infrequent type of case today, an item A case. Process for that case today will be first I'll read into the record, kind of set up for the applicant. Here's what brought the applicant to appeal my decision or interpretation to the board. I'll turn over then, after my initial presentation, turn it over to the appellant for their 10 minutes. I'll have a 10-minute period right after them to sort of explain Codes' side of the story. And then if there are other interested parties, they'll have 10 minutes in total after I speak. And then the applicant will have a rebuttal of all of those groups at the end. Again, that clock does not run during questions from the board or your responses to it. And the board is allowed under their rules to ask questions of any party at any time. So we'll go through all cases set for public hearing today, and the board will vote and discuss, will discuss and vote on the cases before you. The board's vested with the powers under Metro Code of Law 1740-180 and 137207 of the state code. Again, you'll need, the board will deliberate and discuss your case and vote on it for it. If you're approved today for your variance, you've got to pick up the permit for which you've applied. You can begin doing that this upcoming Monday. Nope, we're closed for Dr. King. Next Tuesday, in the Codes office, follow up with your zoning examiner, whoever you've been working with in the Codes office for your permit beginning this coming Tuesday. You do have 2 years to obtain the permit for which you've applied. So let's say you're granted a variance for a setback and you're not ready to build yet, but you want to maybe this summer, that's fine. You just be sure to get your permit and get started within 2 years of today's date. The board requires that a quorum be present to hear the cases before you. This board has 7 members. We are expecting all 7 today. So you will need 4 affirmative votes. That's 4 of the members present, whether it's 6 or 7. You'll need 4 of those members to vote in your favor for your case to be granted. If by chance you don't have 4 affirmative votes, let's say it's tied. In this instance, a tie vote would be 3-3, or it will stay on our agenda for the next 30 days. Your case will stay on our agenda, and we'll have one meeting in the next 30 days. That will be the first Thursday in February here in this office. At that time, any of the members who participated is allowed to change their votes. If there was a member who was not present, they're allowed to watch today's recordings and become eligible to participate at that meeting. If still at the end of that meeting you don't have 4 affirmative votes, your case is deemed denied by operation of law. Code requires that all testimony be recorded. So when you do come testify, don't shout from the gallery or anything like that. Just come up to the table. Right beside your microphone is the stand. Right at the base of the stand, on the right-hand side of that stand, you're going to push that button one time. And as the young man from General Services reminded me, only push it once. Don't push it multiple times. It kind of shuts the whole meeting down for a little bit, and the audio doesn't work. So if you need help, just raise your hand. I'll come push that button for you. But when it does turn red, like my mic is right now, see that. Identify yourself and make your presentation. The board does have a consent agenda, and prior to the meeting, the chairman reviews the cases for consent, and if there are, chairman feels that the applicant meets all the criteria for a variance, and they feel that testimony will not alter the material facts, they recommend the case for consent. I'll now go over the cases recommended for the consent agenda by Chairman Pepper. And if you are here in opposition to any of these cases I'm about to call, raise your hand, please, and we'll remove it from consent and hear it in its order as listed on the agenda. So the first case recommended for consent today is case 2025-001. Annie Kirby, Senior, VVP Landever, the appellant at 869 Elvira Avenue, requesting a variance from the setback requirements in the SP Zone District to construct a ground sign. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 1 on Elvira Drive? Mr. Chairman, seeing none. The next case recommended for consent is case 2025-2, Carl and Denise Guy, 8520 Raymond Roberts Drive, requesting a variance in the side setbacks for an addition to an existing garage. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 2 on Raymond Roberts Drive? Okay, Mr. Chairman, seeing none. And then finally, this will be on page 4 in the center of the page, case 2025-5, Nelson Community Partners at 2122 Buena Vista Pike, requesting a variance from the parking requirements on RM40, applicant seeking to construct a new multifamily development. Are there any parties here opposed to case 5 on Buena Vista? Mr. Chairman, seeing none, that is your consent agenda.
Move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. All right. So folks look at me like, what just happened? The board approved cases 2025-1, -2, and -5. If you're here as the applicant for those cases, you are free to go. I will always, as the first meeting in 2025, invite you to stay and sit with the rest of us for the cases that are coming. And per usual, no one ever stays. So we will hear the cases remainder on the consent. Members of the board, looking at today's agenda under new business, our new business is completed for the day. All that's left before the board will be old business. And so beginning at some preliminary announcements, let me give you those. Case 2024-243, Ms. Beverly Boswell at 8926 Highway 100. Ms. Boswell was requesting a street setback variance to construct a tiny home and a detached carport on her thing. That case has been deferred until February the 20th, 2025. That's the second meeting in February. It'll be in this room at 1 p.m. So if you are here for case number 243, that case will not be heard today. The other preliminary announcement is case 2024-246, Mr. Rigoberto Cam, 111 Margaret Street, requesting a variance in the rear setback. That case has been deferred until February 20th, 2025. So if you're here for cases left over from last year, cases 243 on Highway 100 and case 246 on Margaret Street, those cases will be heard on February 20th. again, I'll offer you the opportunity to hang with us. And if not, we will start with today's case. So the first case on our agenda in front of the board today is at the top of page 2. It's case 2024-244, Mission Homes LLC is the appellant. Mark 1 Development, the owner of the property located at 3508 Foxhall Road. They are requesting an item A appeal, challenging the zoning administrator's denial/cancellation of permit issued in the RS10 district, referred to the board under section 1740-180, item A. So I know that as far as timing goes today, I know the appellants are present. Are there any other interested parties besides the applicant and opposite? Okay. As we talked about at the beginning, if there's a large group of y'all, if there are other speakers who'd like to come during your time, please work out your time accordingly before you come up. You guys will speak in the third position. First will be me preliminarily to just kind of set up the case, and then I'll turn it over to the appellant's counsel, and then I will go second and give Metro's position, and then I'll turn it over to you folks as a group to speak. Again, all of us individually have 10 minutes to present. Let me just real quickly set up the presentation for that case. All right, Mr. Chairman, the first case before us, I said, is case 2024-244. This case involves the issuance of a permit by the Codes Department and subsequent revocation by me and my department for issuance of what you see on the photograph and on the slide here are underlying lots that exist underneath the larger parcel. Let me outline the larger tax parcel. Is this rectangly square here. See, there were this red area I've highlighted is one of the two underlying lots that the applicant created. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'll talk more during my time, but long story short, from the end of the Codes Department, there were two individual underlying lots. This office has routinely issued permits for underlying lots on older plats. I was initially contacted by some neighbors questioning why we were issuing this permit. A lot of that discussion hinged around an appeal case, a prior appeal case on another lot in this vicinity, where the board overturned the zoning administrator in not allowing an applicant to build two homes on two underlying lots. As I told the neighbor at the time, that case has no bearing on this particular lot. So the permit sort of proceeded through the normal process. We issued it. At some point, I was notified shortly after the permit was issued that there was a particular court case ruled by a chancellor here in Davidson County over this very plat. And the chancellor's ruling held that these were not underlying lots, so I subsequently revoked. And I'll go into more detail at my time. But that's the long and short of the overall rough procedure. But at this time, I'll turn over to the appellant and offer them the opportunity to present the board again. Sir, I apologize. Your name has escaped me. I know we met just a few minutes ago, but you'll have 10 minutes. You feel free to preserve however much time you'd like for rebuttal out of that 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Horn.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gary Groves, and I represent the applicant, appellant, Mission Homes. We're going to be able to. Yes, sir. Put this up here. Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to thank the board. It's kind of a thankless job to do this, and I appreciate you all spending your time to hear these cases. Also want to take the liberty of speaking just for a minute to the people here, some of the faces I recognize. Obviously, there will be opposition, so it looks like I'm going to have at least my 10 minutes to speak. We're not the enemy. In fact, what my client wants to do, and he's going to come talk to you about what he proposes, is to take 3.5, what were originally platted as 3.5 lots, and put two homes on them. I know that that has been done many, many times in Metro. Sometimes those results look good, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you get those long, skinny houses that are 2 feet apart from each other. That's not what he is proposing to do. He's proposing to take those 3.5 lots, build 2 5,000+ square foot houses on them that will dramatically improve the appearance of what is now an abandoned home on those what were initially platted. I think it's 3.5 lots. So I may not be able to persuade you, but I hope that he will. We think that this will improve the neighborhood, not detract from it. And I want to tell you the story too, to the board and to the people here. My client and the people who preceded him with this development would have never purchased this property had it not been for repeated assurances from codes that they could put 2 houses on it. I would like to present a declaration, if it's admissible, from people who were involved even before my client was. May that be introduced? And I even have copies if we don't want to pass this out, actually. Yeah, they're separate. We didn't have paper clips. Should give all those. And what I've just handed to the board is a declaration of Mr. Terraggiano. Mr. Terraggiano was involved with this property when it was initially offered for sale. He looked at it and saw that there were 3.5 lots. The development that he wanted to do, either 2 or 3 homes on this, would not be feasible unless he could construct 2 homes on it. So he contacted Metro, and the details are laid out in his declaration, and was told that he could build 2 houses. In fact, if you look in some detail here, he quotes the emails from Metro, and the emails are attached. And it was one is from Mr. Hargis, and Mr. Hargis himself said, "This neighborhood consists of multiple, much smaller lots that all may be reestablished. The request here is to make 2 lots out of 3 and a portion of the 4th. I will permit this for a single-family residence on each lot as long as the lot meets the required setbacks and other regulations." They did. And it was based on these emails from Metro that said, you can do what you want to do, that the client made the decision to buy this in the first place. They went to the bank to try to get it financed, and the bank said, we're not going to make you a loan for this purchase price unless you can put 2 houses on it. So they bought it, and then they were in repeated communications with Metro to ensure that they could put 2 houses on this lot. Then my client, Chris Knight with Mission Homes, got involved, and he continued that based upon the representations that, 2 houses could be built. He spent a lot of money preparing plans and having it surveyed. Survey plans for the construction of 2 single-family homes. Way down the road in the project, after he had invested $150,000 or so, building permits issued, he continued to move forward with the project. And only then, in September of 2024, was he told, "Well, that permit that we issued, we got to take it back because it shouldn't have been issued in the first place."
Mr. Grooms, can you briefly identify the expenditures that occurred between the issuance of the permit and then the revocation?
Yeah, I'd like if I may, I'd have my client address that?
Yeah, and obviously questions and responses to questions don't count towards, I guess, your time.
I did not reserve time. May I still reserve 3 minutes, please, for rebuttal?
Sure.
And then to do that.
I think the record reflects is around $150,000.
Yes.
I think is what the number.
And I think Mr. Bradford's question was, when was that done? Was it done?
Correct. I just wanted some clarification. The record indicated there was money spent. I want to get a sense of because there were some vested rights,
Yes.
when did this come up as between date of issuance and date of revocation, and how that kind of aligns with it?
And I'll let him speak to that, and I'll have to, in all candor, say that probably the majority was issued before the majority was spent before the building permit was issued, because I believe it was issued, and then About a month later, it was rescinded. So he had already spent a fair amount of money before the permit was issued to him. So I know time is, 10 minutes goes really fast, lawyers who talk a lot. But again, this development, he never would have bought this property. He never would have gotten a bank loan. He never would have spent money to develop plans and surveys. He never would have done any of that had it not been for repeated representations from Metro that he could do what he wanted to do. So speak briefly to the case that Mr. Hargis referred to. And I realize, given that case, we've got some issues. I just realize that. Maybe swimming uphill on part of this. What's different from that case in this case is that there was not a vested rights argument made in that case.
There was not a what?
There was not a vested rights argument. There was not any evidence presented of reliance upon representations from Metro or the issuance of the permit itself. I've got 2 minutes. Can I swear Mr. Knight in, please?
Yeah, he doesn't have to be sworn in.
Okay, because he needs to come up to the table, right?
Thanks. Morning, how are y'all? Morning, how are you?
Please state your name.
Christopher Knight.
And Mr. Knight, what you do for a living?
I'm a general contractor.
And how long have you been a general contractor?
I've been in construction over 2 years and had my company for 3.
How did you first get involved in the property that we're here about today?
So I build for an investor out of California. I build his high-end homes. He calls me when he's found a property that he's interested in and thinks it has potential. He brought this one to me. As you already said, Giorgiano, he had already done his due diligence. He gets me involved saying we can build 2 for 1. I run the costs, make sure it's appropriate and it's worth everybody's time.
Let me just put a picture of the property that's here, see if you can identify it. Well, unfortunately, it's flipped around here. That's not very smooth presentation. Is this the, Mr. Can you flip that for me?
I don't know if we've considered this. Given the number of opponents here in the presentation, if the board would entertain just a 5-minute extension on each because of the sort of scope of the case.
We would like that as well, just given, especially the number of folks here.
You
would
might
like
check
to
it out. Okay, so everybody has 15 minutes.
Then I will reserve, if I can, 5 minutes for the vote.
So, Mr. Grooms, before you could, I think you're on the vested property rights. I mean, here's my understanding is that only applies after you've spent money and then the municipality enacts a zoning change. And that just didn't really happen here. I mean, this zoning change was enacted in like 1940, right? I mean, that's what I understand the vested rights to hinge on. You go out, you get your permit, you do things, and then the municipality changes the zoning laws.
Well, I think that can be one way, one application that's probably the most common application. But I think anytime someone obtains a vested right, I mean, it can be interrupted by things other than a zoning change, I guess you could say. So in other words, if someone had a vested right, a building permit, let's take, for example, people who were issued building permits by codes based upon the same variance that we're talking about here. Mr. Hargis, I think, will say that Metro has issued permits just like this for a lot of infill things, and those would have been, under the interpretation of the statute by Chancellor McCoy, not validly issued. So you could have every home that has been built based upon Metro's prior interpretation of the code provision that Chancellor McCoy disagreed with They don't have a vested right. They can tear their houses down, I guess.
And just so I'm correct, because Chancellor McCoy's name is, wasn't it Chancellor Lyle that issued this opinion that we're all?
I
I think it was Chancellor
heard,
Lyle.
was it Lyle? Okay.
And the reason I asked, I just wanted to ask Mr. Harris that earlier, because when I read the opinion, I saw her name on it. I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed the opinion, so.
Right. So I hope I answered your question. I think that you have a vested right. The vested right could be interfered with in any number of ways, not just a zoning change. And here, not only the vested rights doctrine, but equitable estoppel. We believe we had a vested right once the permit was issued, but they were repeatedly told by Metro that they could do this, and they never would have proceeded but for those representations.
Yeah, and that's clear. Your client is not at all at fault for that. But Mr. Hargis has also cited a case, the CAPS case, that equitable estoppel just can't be used against the government.
Well,
I don't know a way of around that. I mean, government, I don't necessarily agree with governmental immunity, but it is what it is. So
I understand.
Is there a way around that? I'm not aware of one.
I understand. If I had a great case that was contrary to CAPS, I would. Of course, if this board affirms, we will take that up with Chancery Court, and we'll take it up with the Court of Appeals.
Okay, I guess.
So, Mr. Knight, is this a picture of the property as it exists today?
Yes, sir.
And when you were looking at this property, was it occupied?
No, sir.
Appeared to have been abandoned and kind of run down?
Yes.
That's the side view, right? Yeah, that's good. That's the same one we saw. Yeah. And is this the street view of the property that we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
What did you plan to construct on the property? I know you've submitted plans to the board and they have those, but what were your plans for the property?
So our plans were, when you get an older house like that, there's no value, and it really shouldn't be lived in. And once you buy that house, it costs more to fix the house up than the house is actually worth. Our plan is to demo the house and build one 4,700 square foot house and another 5,000 square foot house, both all brick, both custom, to try to get a sell point of $2.5 million to bring value to the neighborhood. The whole idea was to build the infrastructure up for the neighborhood, not put two little shotguns. We're going to build 3-story, fully brick, beautiful homes. That's what I specialize in.
I want to show you a picture of another property just right around the corner at 3491 Ruland. Which one? Okay, is this a property right around the corner from the property that we're looking at?
Yes, sir.
And what's the address of that property?
3513 Merlin Point.
And so I know that's not, that we do have the plans for your property, but according to Zillow, that property's just around the corner, doing something similar to what you're going to do, is valued at $1.8 million. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And is that in line with what you plan to build
Yes.
on these two lots?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you recognize these properties as well, also just down the road on Ruland?
Yes.
And did the builder developer of that property do something very similar to what you plan to do here?
He did exactly the same thing that we're looking to do.
Okay. Do you believe that the type of development that you're planning that is shown here would improve the appearance from what is on this lot today?
Yes, tenfold.
I do want to address the question raised by Mr. Bradford about the expenditures made both before and after the issuance of the building permit. Can you answer his question? What money was spent based upon the representations from Metro that the lots could be subdivided and two houses could be built on them.
So, Mr. Bradford, when we talk about expenditures, as soon as we buy property, there's carrying costs immediately. So we're taking a loan out on the property, and then, takes 8 months to go through planning, architectural works, all that. So you got a carrying cost. Not only that, when you find a property that you like, you also include what we call an opportunity cost of loss. Meaning we could have taken that $800,000 and put it in something else guaranteed. So we call it an opportunity loss.
But you didn't have a building permit. You didn't have a permit at the time that you acquired the property, right?
No. I've never bought a property, have a permit first, then buy a property.
Did you have plans or anything?
No. No. We figured out how we could divide the property by going through the right steps. And at that point, that's when we decided that we could actually build some nice houses on this property and improve everybody. At that point, countless man hours for his company out of California, all of my people that work for me, going through planning, design, back and forth with Metro for 7 months to make sure we met all the requirements that they told us we needed. At that point, like Mr. Groom said, we had gotten the permits. We were about to start it. 4 days later, I got a call saying they were revoking permits. And we had all just spent a year of our lives for nothing. And countless man hours.
Can I follow up with that? Just a question.
Sure.
He did, Mr. Bradford's question was, we understood that you had spent a lot of money doing the plans and getting the surveys plans drawn. Mm-hmm. Did you continue that work after the permit was issued?
Yes.
Okay, and what kind of work did you do after the permit was issued?
So once we get the permits, is that after the permits are presented?
Yes.
So once we have the permits, we keep working on the inside of the office and the back of the house, where we're doing all of our estimating, meeting people on site, getting with codes, making sure we have all of our ducks in a row. We have 2 designers that work for me, and they're not cheap. They have 30 years experience with both of them. We're paying them. We are, doing our due diligence as a construction company, make sure we do it right. So I come from a background of very high-end builders in Troubadour and the Grove, so that's what I build.
Mr. Knight, we've referred to a bunch of emails, communications, and given the time constraints, we don't have the time to go through all of those. But I did make copies of various email communications that you had with Metro, and I'd like to introduce those.
Usually when we buy a property, we go through everything looking for contextual overlays on site, HOAs through Metro, things like that to make sure we don't buy something that's not worth its value. In this case, there was no contextual overlays in the zoning. So there was nothing to tell us that this property could not be subdivided. And when we asked, they said we could. So we were kind of led down a path that wasn't right.
Mr. Knight, is there anything else that you want to communicate to the board today?
No, I think we're just trying to create a better infrastructure for that area. The house will likely end up sitting there. The longer it sits, the more it decays because no one's going to take care of it. When we bought the house, it was from a family that didn't want anything to do with it, so they split the title and the deed. And the only person that's probably going to buy that house is another builder just like me. That's going to want to split it, tear it down, and build something nicer.
Mr. Hargis. And just to clean that up, Mr. Hargis, would you hand that to the witness? I'm sorry, I just want him to identify that as the email communications that he had with Metro and Codes.
I think we could stipulate to that.
Okay.
We'll agree that these are the email communications that Mr. Knight had with Metro.
Mr. Knight, our time's about up. Is there anything you want to say to the folks sitting here?
No, I appreciate meeting you all. Thanks for coming out. But I think y'all had y'all were trying to get in touch with Mark out of California, and y'all kept bringing up Batavia's, I think is what someone had mentioned to me. And we didn't build those homes. I didn't build those. I only build the high ends. Like I have a 6,000 square foot, 3 million I'm building right now for them. The
Excuse
houses
me,
that we're gonna
Chairman.
build are gonna be very.
I think
nice
applicants
and
should
elegant.
address us because we are the one deciding. I think
I
they
agree-
can
I agree with
have
Ms.
a
Jones.
Okay.
Yes.
conversation
If you could-
afterwards.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grooms. Thank you, Mr. Knight. Okay, we will hear from and you have some time left in rebuttal, I believe.
Yes,
So,
sir. You'll have five.
And that'll go, the rebuttal, I want to make sure, the rebuttal goes after you and the.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes, I'll go, I will not take 15 minutes. I mean, I can if you like me to, but I'll take 15 minutes. And I make a joke there, and I don't mean to joke about this situation. The emails that council submitted to you are what I said, and full disclosure, also being a member of the Nashville Bar. Mr. Terrahano is a former client of mine when I worked at Baker Donaldson. Obviously, I since terminated a relationship with Baker before coming back with Metro. Mr. Terrahano used to be a client of mine, for the record. So it pained me to send the email to council and the builder to revoke the permit. It had always been our policy in Metro that these underlying lots created by plat prior to the adoption of subdivision regulations in this county, which would have been in September of '64, is when Davidson County adopted subregs post-Metro. But those lots are legally, validly created lots. Even if they do not comply with the zoning regulations today, they are legally non-conforming. That would have been the case here in this instance, and it was, and even my emails say to that effect that, yeah, you're good here. But for the chancellor's ruling, I find out later. And it does pain me to have to revoke permits when I thought we were also correct, that these lots are fine. I initially received a call, and you've got my letter. I won't read this into the record. You have it. But I want to give you some background more anecdotally. I received complaints from neighbors asking, hey, kind of what's going on here? How are they building two lots? There was a BZA case in 2018. It was during a period I was not here, so I wasn't aware of it, on an adjoining lot in this same subdivision, in this same plat, but not the subject lot. That the zoning administrator held that, no, these are legal lots. The neighbors in that case came to this board. You overturned the zoning administrator at the time, I think John Michael, that no, these are not building lots. I believe the builder took the case to court and lost at the chancery level with Chancellor Lyles. I apologize for my typo, Chancellor. But Metro did not appeal, so that case stands. I was unaware of that case upon the issuance of the permit. Had I known that case and its implications on this very plat, and that's my feeling, that the implications of the Chancellor's ruling is just confined to this plat. There are still other lots in Davidson County that predate zoning regulations. We still allow those lots to be constructed and two homes put on them, or 4 or 6, however many underlying lots there are, so long as they comply with the zoning regulations of today. But it, just for all the parties present here, it was, we did issue it with an understanding of one of the facts being this way, and come to later find out the same neighbors reached out to me and said, no, there's a court ruling on this. And I was like, send that to me, because that's a distinction.
And just so I'm clear, the prior zoning administrator came to the same initial conclusion that you came to when you initially, in the decision to issue the permits.
Correct. And that is still the department's policy on lots, but for litigation, we're directly on point that the plat at issue was litigated. So the neighbor emailed me a copy of the court ruling in the case. I then subsequently, I think the first top email alerted them by telephone. I think your client, I reached out to him, left a voicemail, and then sent an email out to, once I found out he had legal counsel, sent an email to legal counsel giving him the official, we're taking it back email, which you see at the top. But as I talked about in my item A letter, all those points they raised, valid points. Metro, we issued the permits based upon the facts that we understood to be correct. and then subsequently find out they're not correct. And it's, as far as the current cases on point, that there's no estoppel against the government in the CAPS case. There just isn't. It's an unfortunate set of facts here, but that's our policy. And going forward for the neighbors that may be present, all the lots in that particular plat have been flagged by our department so as to not repeat individual lots being constructed. No applause is needed for that. Really, I don't. Yeah, thanks anyway. But there, I believe the record will show that there have been possibly 2 homes constructed in that plat prior to the applicant's plat where the homes were built. There are folks living in the day. This department is not going to force those people out and demolish their homes, so that's not happening. If it's a mistake we've made, then.
When were those homes built, and at what point in the context of the prior ruling and then the homes that you referenced that
I don't know the exact timing between them. Obviously before the subject lots happened. I don't know their context as to the chancellor's. So I can find that information.
Okay.
If you'll give me a chance
Sure.
to, before your deliberations, let me get that back to you to find out. Because there may be some instances where that one happened before the chancellor's ruling.
Well, that's my if there's houses that were built before the chancellor made that adjudication,
But there won't be any more coming forth in this plat. That's not to say adjoining lots that are on different plats. Those will still continue on as we always have. So.
Joey, I've got one question for you. I guess a bit of a hypothetical, but let's just say, for example, the people that are here in opposition are in fact actually the opposite. They're for it. Would that change anything?
No. One of the parts of zoning administration and one of the parts for this board, it's not a popularity contest. I make unpopular choices and decisions daily. My inbox will tell you that. My director will probably swear to that under oath that he gets emails where people are mad at me because I make an interpretation that somebody dislikes. No, sir, it doesn't matter. I mean, as officer of the court, I'm going to follow what a court says.
No, I understand. I thought that might be the answer. Just wondering. Thanks, Joey.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, even at times I may not agree with court. We as lawyers run into times that we disagree with the court's ruling. But I'm not saying necessarily in this case I do or do not. I wasn't here in 2018, but. Any more questions for me? Okay, since I'm standing here at this time, I'm going to reset the clock for 15 minutes. Those parties, other interested parties, either for or against, are allowed to come during this time. Like we talked about, I got 4 seats here, so feel free to fill them up. You all will have 15 minutes in total. I'll start the clock after the first person's talk. So have a seat there, and again, push that button just to the right of the microphone stand only one time. Oh, no, at the very bottom. Yes, sir. There you go.
All right. We may have some musical chairs. We have 40-something people here.
Tell us your name and address.
We will. We'll move fast, too. Chip Howarth, 3714 Wimbledon Road, grew up at 3300 Wimbledon Road. My parents still are today. Raised a whole bunch of trouble all throughout this neighborhood my entire life. Very familiar with it. Out of curiosity, have y'all ever had anyone come up here and say they're not going to build beautiful homes? They're going to build shotgun homes? Rhetorical question, of course. So, few points to address. I'm not a lawyer. I just, slept at a Holiday Inn last night, and the vested right argument hinges on whether or not a permit was validly issued. I think Joey has acknowledged that after he received the chancellor's case, he realized the permit was issued in error. So therefore, the vested right argument fails because the permit that was issued was not valid to begin with. To address that point, we as a neighborhood feel like we are constantly on the defense for this issue. We're very appreciative of Joey and his team and his efforts, and as well as the advocacy of our neighbors to address this issue. This plat was here. We are currently working with the appropriate parties to develop an overlay so that these situations do not happen again. That comes with its own issues that we're working through. Glad to hear that Joey and his team have flagged all the lots. This issue's been decided by this body and by the Chancery Court. I don't know that we need to add a whole lot more. We have 40-plus neighbors here who've spent 30, 40, 50 years in the neighborhood. I don't imagine y'all get a lot of cases that are layups. To me, this feels like a layup for a neighborhood that's very invested in what they currently have and protecting the beauty and spirit of their neighborhood and have spent the time and money, because the neighborhood funded the defense of the previous lawsuit, to protect this neighborhood. There's a ton of interest in moving forward accordingly. So I just want to thank y'all for all that y'all do for Nashville, and I appreciate your time.
My name is Guy Huerman. I'm affectionately known as the neighbor.
Can you give us your address, please?
3504 Foxhall Road, right next. This permit was issued on August 30th. I was the one who discovered, through the good work of our neighbors on Ruland, the Chancery Court judgment, and I sent it to Joey on September 9th. And within a matter of minutes or hours, there was a stop work order. So I just want to add that date in there. The permit was issued on August 30th. The stop work order was issued on the 9th. I'd also like to point out that although it was claimed that thousands of hours of due diligence was done, the appellant was on constructive notice with the White Pines decision. The other thing is the appellants did show you some images of the houses that they're building. What they failed to show you was the house right next to mine, 5 feet from my property line. It's a 3-story. I believe it's about 25 feet wide with, I think, 20 feet of the frontage is a garage. Does not match the look and feel, the character of the neighborhood at all. So I'd encourage them to show you those plans. I have a copy of it right here. So, and then just, globally talking about RS10, our neighborhood is RS10. And neighbors who come to this neighborhood, they look at the parcel viewer, they see it's RS10. They have the reasonable expectation in the zoning law that they're in an RS10 neighborhood, and that's being circumvented by taking an RS10 lot, splitting it in half, claiming that this is non-conforming, then building 2 houses. I don't think that that should be the purpose and intent of zoning law. I know that extends to the Metro Council and other issues, but I thank you for hearing this, and we stand in full support of Joey's decision.
My name is Doug McLaughlin. I live at 10 Foxhall Close. I'm also a property manager and former banker. I'm not an attorney. So what I'm going to throw out is more common sense, but how much that carries, I don't know. First of all, the plat you all are talking about goes back to 1934. And the reason I know that is my wife's parents were one of the first families to purchase land that that Life and Casualty Insurance Company was marketing. They and Flem Smith were the first people to build on Wimbledon. And her parents moved a 200-year-old log house from Bethpage, Tennessee to Wimbledon. The successor owner is behind me too, Steve Contarellis. I'm also here as past president of Foxhall Close, and a lot of our Foxhall members are here, a lot are not. I can assure you every one of them squarely is behind refusing this project to go forward. The appellant mentioned several times due diligence. In my common sense view, that was the problem here. The people charged with due diligence, whether it's the attorney, the builder, the purchaser of the lot, did not do sufficient due diligence. I said, I'm not an attorney, but it seems to me a law clerk could have found this hearing, this decision by the Chancery Court, had they worked properly on this instead of turning around and blaming the Board of Zoning Appeals and the zoning department for their problems. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey Shanks. I live at 3507 Grayswood, so right behind the property in question. I'm here on behalf of myself and my wife and the neighborhood. Just want to give, a bit of the human story too of who all's living in the neighborhood. I owned a house in another part of town before moving over here, and very high density, tall and skinny area. And unfortunately, in February of 2023, my wife and two of her friends were held up at gunpoint in the driveway. And so we had to make some really, really tough decisions about our future, our financial future, where we wanted to live. And we chose this neighborhood after driving through, seeing all the families out and about, believing that it was zoned RS10 and that we would kind of have that look and feel. And, our finances extremely impacted by going from, a low 2% mortgage back in the good old days to buying at pretty much the peak in the fall of 2023. So, that's our main piece there. And then also just wanted to add, I think there's been a couple of code violations just over the last year since the developers purchased the property of overgrown weeds and lack of maintenance that just give us a little bit of pause of how much care and attention will be put into the property going forward. We are at the bottom of the hill on Wimbledon, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been much of a kind of a floodwater analysis done on where all that water is going to go when it comes downhill, and all of a sudden there's twice as much density right in our backyard. So just wanted to thank you all for your time. Thanks for hearing us out, and that's all.
My name is Mark Frissy, and my wife Tina and I live at 3707 Wimbledon, just a stone's throw from the house in question. My wife would bring the elderly widower food as we watch the house slowly decay, and we're pleased that something's going to be done with the property. We're also cognizant, at least my wife and I, of the risks that developers take to build high-quality homes, and thanks for all you do. That said, this is an emotionally charged issue, and I would just point to the map you showed initially. And there's a couple things. It's a strategic intersection. It is the corner between the main road between Wimbledon or Woodmont and Wimbledon. It is the only exit from the entire Foxhall Close neighborhood if you're not a resident. It is on another street. It borders on a cul-de-sac, and then the street going up the hill where the two houses would be. It's a narrow house, it's a narrow street, and you know what garbage days are like. You don't have to hear about sidewalks right now from us. But that street is narrow at the best of occasions, and it's full of kids. And I'm concerned about the fact that it is in this neighborhood, which is so strategic to the whole heart of the place. And finally, the stormwater issues are significant factors, and you know that water drains down, straight down into Foxhall, and there's a lot of infrastructure that the city needs to do either way. Finally, it's sad that that map showed the little gray lines and the anomaly of an insurance company deciding 25 feet lots. They just decided that 90 years ago, and we're still living with that. And this thing's being sliced and diced in funny ways, this property. So we're all bared with that burden. But it's really, to me, the strategic nature of that intersection and our concerns about the kids, the drainage, the crowding, and traffic that too much housing burden would bring. So thanks very much for your consideration.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Buter. I live at 3501 Wimbledon Road, a house that I've occupied for 27 years. One of the things that has come to my mind, other than I'm in agreement with my neighbors that you've heard from, is that as the appellant was up here and being questioned by their attorney, they kept talking about their conversations with Metro, where I don't recall or did not hear that the proposed builder ever talked to a neighbor. Had they done their, what they call due diligence and come into our neighborhood, as you've heard, there are neighbors walking in our neighborhood all the time. There are families with kids playing. Had anyone come through our neighborhood and said, do you guys have any history with builders in this neighborhood? All of us would have said, absolutely. Back in 2018, we went to court over this issue. As you heard, the neighborhood collected money to fund our court case. So the one missing piece of the puzzle for the appellant is that they never talked to the neighbors. And that would have saved them a lot of headache. I don't really feel too much sorrow over the invested effort they've made when they missed a critical piece of the puzzle. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, that got a signal from the opposition. They wished, they have no more speakers. So with that, I'll reset the clock. Mr. Bradford, your question about when was that permit issued versus the Chancellor's ruling? Chancellor's ruling was in 2018 and the permit was issued in 2005. So it would predate Chancellor's ruling. Oh, 2020, I apologize. Yeah, filed in, thank you. Signed by the court in March of 2020, so 15 years after.
Okay, so, and just to let you, the point was that the ruling that there basically were for the underlying lots and the reversion of the underlying lots, or the decision to issue the permits based upon the underlying lots occurred in 2005, and then the ruling that basically, made the determination with respect to the subdivision plat that there weren't underlying lots occurred. That's what occurred in 2020?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
And I was just looking too, just since I did state it on the record, let me correct myself. It looks like there's one other home that was issued in 2017 at 3493 Ruland Place.
Thank you.
I have 5 minutes, and I doubt if I will use that much time. I do appreciate the views expressed by all the people here. I've been on your side of the fence and homeowners disputes and preventing things in my neighborhood that I didn't like to. So I feel where you're coming from. I do wish that we had had an opportunity before today to show you the quality of the home.
Mr. Grims, could you flip your microphone on?
There are going to be built there. And I'm convinced that, am I on the speaker? Did I push the wrong one? Okay, that if you had seen those, you would agree that these homes are going to improve the value of your neighborhood. Someone spoke up and said that they were glad to see that something was going to happen with this property that has slowly gone into decay. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, because no one is going to, it's not going to be feasible for someone to come in, buy that very expensive property and put one building on it. It's just not foreseeable. That is not the highest and best use of the property. I do want to address a couple of people who said that, suggested that our client, all the money he's out was because he didn't do appropriate due diligence. I know a couple of folks on the board are lawyers and familiar with the due diligence that people generally do in a development. They did all of that. They came in and they did a title search. They looked for historical overlays. When they realized that this was a, quote, non-conforming lot, they did what any person would do, not talk to neighbors, but talk to codes and say, we want assurance that despite the fact that it's non-conforming, we're about to plunk down a lot of money to buy this. Can we put 2 houses on it? I suggest to you that they did far more due diligence than a lot of developers who come in and purchase property. The final point I want to make, and I do sympathize with Mr. Hargis's position, even though my client's out of money, there's no animosity, he has no belief that anybody here acted in bad faith. But I believe that the idea that you can't have a vested right unless the permit is validly issued. And if the permit was issued invalidly, then you do not have a vested right. Think where that takes you. As Mr. Hargis told you, they've done this all over Metro. Plats that were recorded have been allowed with established lots based on those plats. They've been allowed to build on them, just like my client did. The chancellor's decision was not unique to this plat. It applies to every recorded plat recorded prior to the current law. So, like he said, they've issued permits in this neighborhood and others on precisely the same basis that they issued them to my client. Is the position that the people who are now living in homes that were built based upon permits that were not validly issued don't have a vested right in their homes? That's where that argument takes you. That's where it takes you. So, well, we're not going to go kick them out, but that's where that argument takes you. I realize that, the board is constrained by the decision of the Chancery Court. Realize that. I'm not going to try to distinguish it on her interpretation of the zoning law. But again, that case did not raise the vested rights or equitable estoppel issues that we've raised here. This case, not allowing my client to build what he wanted to build violates that fundamental rule that all of us learned first year in law school. This just ain't right. It just ain't right. They were told repeatedly they could do this. They spent a lot of money buying the property, preparing plans, and then get the permit issued, and oops, we made a mistake. You're just too bad. That's just not right. So we ask the board to reverse that decision and issue the permits. Thank you.
Okay, does any, sir, we've closed the public hearing now. We'll be discussing, so.
I'll start, Chairman. I understand this issue are very, very emotional for the neighbors, and as well as developer who purchased the property under the one circumstance. But I think this is item A appeal, so our focus is if our zoning administrator erred or not. And I think based on 2020 Chancellor Lyle's decision, so this, prior to that, the Metro's policy might be different, but I think Chancellor Lyle's 2020 decision make that as a law of the land. So underlying lot is not valid, and they're not legally created lot. That's the decision. So those things underlying a smaller lot cannot be come back as a zombie. So that's the law. So with that, I think revoking the permit and building permit and denying the permit would be the right decision. With that, I think I'm pretty confident zoning administrator didn't err. And only error he could have prevented is with, court department had known the 2020 ruling before originally have a conversation and issue the permit. But if that time, neighborhood bring the appeal, probably my ruling, knowing 2020 Chancellor Lyle's ruling, we may rule zoning administrator erred by issuing the permit. So with that, so I renew zoning administrator did not make an error.
My thoughts here. First, I think that all three presentations were great, were excellent, and I commend the neighbors, Mr. Grooms and Mr. Hargis, for solid work. Thank you. What's interesting is I think that if we were in the opposite posture, I think that if we were here and it was the neighbors had an item A appeal of the zoning administrator's decision. I think my position on this would be his initial decision may not have been an error, but I also don't think that his subsequent decision to revoke the permit was an error. Because I think that I've reviewed Chancellor Lyle's opinion on this, and I think the fact that we had two zoning administrators that came to effectively the same position on the nature of the underlying lots is not something to be ignored. However, I think you're absolutely, I completely agree with you that, the question before us is, did the zoning administrator, Mr. Hargis, err in revoking the permits based upon this opinion? And while I think that this entire situation is really regrettable, and I think it's really unfortunate, I don't think he erred in relying upon this court opinion in making the decision to revoke the permits.
And just to clarify quickly, it's the standard that the error act arbitrarily.
Correct. Oh, yes.
Well, I agree. I don't think the zoning administrator erred. I think that this chancellor's decision is it has to have some presidential value, and it's the same neighborhood, same plat, same everything. I will say, I'd add, I don't know. I think the developer did there was some criticism about not doing due diligence. I think that there is no better due diligence than going to zoning and or codes and saying, does this work? And so I think it's, as Mr. Bradford said, it's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any, the fact, if there's a ruling that the zoning administrator did not err or act arbitrarily, should not be construed as any sort of commentary on the quality of what the developer did here. I think that this is is a really, really unfortunate situation that I think we find ourselves in, and that both the developer and the neighbors find themselves in, and Mr. Harkis. Bless his heart, don't want to forget him.
Well, and I also, I can see how it got by everybody, because, it's a 2019 opinion, and we probably have, since between then and now, we've probably had 1,000 cases, and I don't know how many things they've inquired about.
And I didn't see, the other thing is I didn't see any record of this opinion somehow, in the chain of title on this property. For any of these, so then there's no reason it would have been. So it's sort of the fact that it was something that came up subsequent to the issuance of the permit, to me, is a totally understandable thing.
Also, before we end, I was handed a handwritten letter, which I passed around, and I believe everybody's had a chance to read, but we need to make sure that gets made part of the record. It was passed to me by someone, I believe, who was with the opposition. There it is right there, okay. So, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll make a motion that the zoning administrator did not err, and the application that the zoning administrator didn't err. We uphold his decision.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion, second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank everybody for being here. Thank you for the presentations.
I would ask those folks that are here, we do have a case after you, so if you would, any conversations, if you can have those out in the main lobby, we'd appreciate it. Good deal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the board will come back into session. I'll read off yours. Okay, our next case, board members, will be case 2024-245, Gabriel Ishi von Meyer, the appellant, Adam and Jacobson Investments at 1201 Bryan Street. The applicant's present. Good. Okay. You're right down there. Are there any parties present in opposition to this case? Seeing none, you'll have 5 minutes to present. Let me go through with the board what you're asking for and the reasons for the variance. This gentleman here is requesting a variance from the contextual overlay requirements in the RS30 district in the Old Hickory area. The applicant seeking to construct a second single-family residence on the property. Referred to the board under section 1736-500. The appellant has alleged jurisdiction under section 1740-180, item A. Let me pull up the... Okay, the subject property is located here that you see. Where's my pointer? There we go. This is the subject parcel in question, is HPR lot. This lot is subject to a contextual overlay district in the Old Hickory area, and a contextual overlay district restricts the sizes and heights of new construction within it. To give you a ratio, it is 150% of the size of the two closest residences to this lot. So in this case, it would be 150 times these parcels right here. So that gets how much can this lot have in buildable footprint. The existing home that's on the lot is intended to remain. So we would deduct the footprint of this residence from that pool of what they're able to build with this structure. And I believe that's the only variance I've got on this property. This is a view of the subject property. Directly across the street is a long-running, non-conforming pallet company that's located here.
So this is an HPR?
It is an HPR lot, yes, sir. And HPR lots for us, when the lot's divided from a zoning standpoint, we treat the entirety of the common area as the lot. It's still the parcel in question, and we apply the zoning to the entirety of the. Yes, sir. I can get you the date of that recording. It's not uncommon for developers to record those HPR docs early, pre-application. Our office generally requires it to be done so that we can apply permits with its own 911 addresses for each unit in that development. But I'll get you the date of the recording of the master deed. So what's allowed, once we take that calculation and we do the math, they are left with 345 and a half square foot of footprint that they can construct on the lot. They are requesting a footprint that you see here of 672 square feet. And then this existing building that's on the property, that'll be raised. It's an accessory structure. We would not count that to the square footages permitted. And then the bottom right photograph is the existing residence that faces, I forget the street on the other side. Yeah, thank you. And then a view on the street where the principal residence faces currently. These homes, as you probably well aware of over there, were built before and during World Wars I and II by the DuPont Company for their employees to live in. My great-grandfather was one of those gentlemen that worked for the DuPont plant in between the war years. But
Question also,
Mhm.
do you know why the application says to build a 1,160 foot square foot, 1.5 story single home?
yes, sir, that square footage includes the second story or the half story up underneath roof line, the living space. That'll be on the second level. The home itself, total square footage, living space in it will be just over 1,000 square feet. That includes the 672 first floor and then the half story. Yes, sir. The code only addresses the footprint and not the total square footage of the residence that's proposed there. It does restrict the heights to a story and a half, which previously we did not have a half story definition. But we do now have a half-story definition in our zoning code. That's really not here or there on this case, but that's the case records. We have it.
Excuse me,
Yes.
before you go, could you open up the map and show us
Absolutely.
the boundary or contextual overlay?
Yes. I will do that right now. Let's see here. We punch in this address. 1201. Yeah, it's fairly large. Let's see here. Sorry, I'll push that out to you here in just a second. Okay, coming at you now. So the contextual overlay district is the purple boundary in the Old Hickory area. And our subject lot, just right, well, just on, it's a boundary parcel right there in the Old Hickory contextual overlay district. There are some of those larger parcels, some of those are schools and businesses and factories that have been exempted from the overlay. But the rest of that purple shaded area is the contextual overlay district. And then to Mr. Pepper's question as far as the recording of that date, we've got a July of 2024 was when the HPR was recorded. It's like July 24th to be exact. Okay. That is our case record, sir. If you would, please state your name for the record and talk to the board about your hardships.
Thanks so much for teeing us up, Mr. Hargis, and thank you to the board. I hopefully have a case for you here that'll be a lot less contentious and a lot simpler than that last one. Basically, as Mr. Hargis said, this property is in the contextual overlay. And the thing about that contextual overlay is that it includes not only the footprints of the surrounding homes, but any of the porches, covered decks, carports, anything like that. So the unique characteristics here, or the hardship, is that the footprint of the carports and porches, specifically on that 1200 Berry Street house, and then also of the neighboring structures, they just limit us to, to a 345 and a half square foot footprint. Again, not the total square footage of the house, but the footprint. And that creates a unique hardship where we can build a 345 square foot footprint house there, but I don't think that it's going to benefit the community. That's not something that we want to do. And I think, so we're just asking for, to build a very modest home there. It's 1,000 square feet. It's got a footprint, as Mr. Hart just said, of 672 square feet. We think it's super reasonable. There's, obviously no one in opposition, and we think it's just going to be better for the neighborhood to have that there than some weird little tiny thing. I don't think we're going to injure anyone, injure the neighboring property or public welfare. The 1.5 story house isn't going to impair anyone's access to light or air. And I don't think it's going to diminish anyone's property values. To the contrary, I think building some tiny, weird 345 foot footprint thing would potentially diminish property values, or just not fit. And we'll maintain the design integrity. It's going to look normal and look like it'll match the rest of what's there. And we can't go and tear off unfortunately, we can't go and tear off the carports or porches of the neighbor's house that we don't own, as much as we'd like to, or as much as we'd like to make some deal with them to tear that out, because that would essentially be what, that would be what would allow us to build a normal house here. But we can't do that, so I'm here before you. Thank you.
So question, let me say first, I don't think anybody else will disagree that 345 square feet is probably not adequate. Maybe that's a big dollhouse or something. But,
it'd be a tiny home.
I think I'm with you on that. When was this turned into an HPR, and who turned it into an HPR?
It was in July, and it was by our group.
Okay. Yeah. And so, in the hardship that you're relying on is that the contextual overlay is the adjoining lots or the adjoining footprint, are small enough that it's putting you into the 300 square foot category. Is that?
It's not. It's really just that their footprints, because of the way that this thing is counted with the carports and the carports and the porches, covered porches being counted. But then, I'm not arguing with the code, but then of course our garage isn't counted. So it's kind of, seems sort of arbitrary in that regard. But because those are all counted, it makes us, because of the coverage area of the neighboring houses and then the carports of that house directly in the front, it makes it such that, the 345 is just what it calculates out to, what we're allowed.
Are there any other HPRs adjoining this lot that you have? Do you know?
That's a great question. I'd have to pull it up. I don't.
There are several in the Old Hickory area, but I don't think
Well,
they're
Mr.
adjacent to him.
One thing, Mr. Hargis, I just want to confirm is, it looks like on parcel viewer, and I guess, I don't know if anybody has any questions for the applicant, but.
I do, but I need the image back of, I guess that one will do. Do you mind if I ask my question?
Oh, sure, yeah, go ahead.
So it seems like, I'm seeing in purple, well, it's all in purple, but above the red square, there's a 141 and a 127. I can't read very well without my reading glasses, but those properties seem, thank you, to be laid out in a manner in which you're trying to lay this property out, but this property happens to be larger, I guess, before it was made into an HPR.
That's correct.
It seems, so do those houses, does 141, so what you're proposing, will it face 12th? Is that what I saw?
It'll face Bryan Street.
Bryan, and is that consistent with 141, 140, 150, or I assume they're also facing Bryan?
That's correct.
They would have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, they're not built in someone's backyard.
Correct.
So you're trying to really establish the pattern that is predominant in that area.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thanks.
You you asked the question that was going to relate to exactly what I was, which is, and I guess what, do you have anything else to add?
No. Oh, I wanted to point one thing out. It did say on the record that, that the zoning district was RS 30. I believe that's an error. I'm pretty sure that our zoning's R6. So I just want to point that out for the record. But yeah, if you look at the way that all those lots are chopped up, I mean, I don't know when those were subdivided or if that would be allowed today. I assume it wouldn't, but what we're doing is just, I mean, it's less density than what's up there and again, consistent with the orientation.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. There is no opposition, is that correct?
No, sir, there is not.
You're in support. All right, we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Carpenter's questions kind of got to the heart, which to me, honestly, this seems like an effort to try to bring the lot more in line with, because you've got a few of these double sort of lots that, but in looking at parcel viewer, it looks like the orientation of, 150 is to Bryan, 144 to Barry, and the intent here would be to build something that mirrors those properties.
So the hardship would be that this lot is along with these other kind of three that are around it
I think hardship is under the contextual overlay, unusually larger lot. Because it's R6, but this lot and the lot behind, only 3 lots are kind of unusually large compared to surrounding area. So therefore, the calculation of the allowed building footage. So that's why I see that as a hardship, because if you look at across the street, it's a 2 divided lot, and skip one, and next to it, under the included in the calculation is 2 separate lots. So this lot being 1 large lot kind of obscure the calculation. So I think that would be the kind of unusual hardship to meet with the condition. But by allowing this slightly enlarge it will meet a more established neighborhood character.
Yeah, I also take the applicant's statement of the hardship of the calculations based upon the footings for the garage, basically, pushing the buildable area even within the context as applied. So I think that there's a couple here. And I know in a lot of these old mill sort of villages that are established, they put lots in a very consistent pattern like this, and then you might actually have these larger lots where, executives or people who are like higher up management get relocated and moved, and you have, my hometown have a number of lots like this too around the old GE plant.
Yeah, I'm just, it's consistent in size too. I mean, R6, each one would be a little over 6,000 square feet.
Okay, does somebody have a motion? Sounds like there's pretty much a consensus.
I make motion to accept the variance request based on the character of the neighborhood and lots, unique makeup of the lots.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, being none, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
All right.
Thanks so much.
That concludes today's business, but before we do, I want to welcome back Ms. Davis to our board. We've missed you. And we've also offered as staff to babysit your child, should you need that during the day. So,
I appreciate
for a board meeting.
the Michael Jordan Jumpman logo
Yes.
as part of the return. Your return is going to be better than his return, which was not so great, but.
Is that it, Joey? I thought we had, okay. That's it, I'm fine with that, okay.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.